realistic is it to throw a knife
In a sword fight.
Hi-ya!
Ow!
Before we try and throw things at each other, let's talk about knife throwing in general.
We aren't knife throwing experts, but we have a basic understanding.
There are three main types of spin. There's full spin, where you throw the knife, it does a full rotation and it hits.
There's half spin where you hold it by the blade and it will spin half a time before making impact.
And then there's no spin, where you throw it and it doesn't spin at all, but flies like a javelin.
Of these three techniques, no spin is the only really viable option.
Full spin needs to be at a certain range so the knife will fully rotate and hit with the tip first. If you're too close or too far, it'll hit with the wrong side.
You can get good enough at knowing your range to know the appropriate range to be at, but when your opponent is chasing after you, it's not a very realistic expectation.
Half spin is a little bit easier because you can adjust your hand position to compensate for how far your target is. The lower down your hand is, the quicker the spin, so the closer the target, and the farther up your hand is, the longer the spin for a farther away target.
But this runs into the same issue of that even if you know the perfect distance and can adjust accordingly, the other person is just charging you down the entire time.
No spin is the best option because you can throw this and it'll sail and hit with the tip no matter what distance the target's at.
That said, this is also the hardest way to throw a knife.
So we're gonna do a little bit of an experiment and we're gonna assume that we are the best knife throwers in the world and see if it's viable to throw a knife during a sword fight. Before we even start, there's a problem. I'm a right-handed fencer and I'm also a right-handed knife thrower.
So for this test, we're just gonna cheat.
We're just gonna swap hands and pretend.
It's really terrifying. Ah, the leg.
Oh my God. The knife distracted me from real sword fighting. You're actually parrying them pretty well.
Yeah, it's actually not that hard to parry them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're distracted. You're distracted.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So the results.
Very effective.
This actually worked really well. There's a couple of caveats. We assumed that every time I hit, it would have been point on. I'm not the best knife thrower in the world, but we were assuming that I was. But even still, that might be unrealistic.
We also assumed that every shot would have stopped me, which is also a pretty big ask.
Even if I had gotten him somewhere in the stomach, he probably could still come at me, but I do have the set of sword to defend myself afterwards. Here are the tactics that I found it really useful. I could go ahead and I could feint the throw, making him move, and then I could throw again after he tried to parry.
The best tactic that I found to counter it was staying at a range where I could still bait a throw and parry and rush in immediately before he had a chance to draw and throw his second one.
But once I realized he was doing that, it was really easy to confuse him with my feint or to feint and hit with my sword. He was so focused on this knife that I actually creeped into distance once and just reached out and touched him. I don't think that we're done with this.
There's a lot more to play with here.
I was so surprised by how effective this was, I want to see how good we can get.
You guys want to see some more knife v sword shenanigans?